Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023. Time for another show, trying to catch up on what's happening in the news. Time to ask around if anybody really knows offhand. I have pressed a button on Skype, and I have maximized the window, and I cannot minimize it. I just don't see where it's one of those stupid things. Yesterday, just took my eye off the ball for just a second, clicked on something that was routine, and then all of a sudden, pow, it's huge. And it's hiding everything else, and it's really difficult to get rid of. But it's not absolutely necessary that it be open at all until Joan calls. And it will automatically open when Joan calls. But then it'll blot out everything else on the screen. But, we'll manage there. But, it's one of those inconveniences of modern life. I don't know how I maximized the thing, and so there's no chance of my finding it again to minimize it. I'm sure I could probably use the internets to find out, but now I have this thing to do because it is Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023 at 9 a.m. And, we need to get together and have some coffee and talk about life. What's happening today? Oh, as always, good idea to check in with Justice Putnam to see what's up. And I have to keep reminding myself, I've been delinquent lately in remembering to check the incoming social media in the morning and repost whatever the terms may be for the different platforms. Those of you who are watching along with us, and I don't know what you're watching because it's a radio show, but listening along with us and letting everybody else know that we're on the air. And thanks, as always, to John Shiflett for doing that via Mastodon. Occasionally, Mighty OCD does the same on Blue Sky. It's been a long time since Bill did it. We miss Bill in the mornings, but assume he's doing great things with his time and maybe even listening and just, shedding some of the responsibility that comes with the joyful listening each morning. I don't know. But, hey, Bill, we're thinking about you here in not Portland, Maine, in case you were ever wondering about that. But, yeah, let's see. We have on tap this morning. We usually, what's this? We've got, John says we're live, and it's true, not just because he says it. Would today be a good day for a Law School 101 explainer on how to request a trial by jury instead of a trial by judge? I don't think it requires a law school explainer. As I understand it in New York, it's a matter of asking for it. I mean, for the most part, you have the right to trial by jury in most instances. You need only ask for it. And as I understand it, I don't know what New York practice is like, but I'll take Greg's word for it when he reports that it's a matter of checking a box on a form when you file, but others have chimed in that says there has to be a separate filing. But it's simply you make the request. I want to invoke my right to a trial by jury, and they simply didn't do it. And either side can make that request. As it turns out, there's no real reason, though, why the prosecution would want it. It's probably better for them on a number of levels that it be decided as a matter of law before a judge who knows how to weigh these things and knows how to exclude evidence intellectually that jurors might not necessarily be able to do, even when you instruct them to try to do it. Okay. So as it turns out, look at this. The Mighty OCD chimes in that not only does he do this in the morning, now he's doing this here on Mastodon and letting me know. I got to check over at Blue Sky for my notifications on Blue Sky. There it is. And I'll Blue Sky thing. I think they used the word skeet on there because whatever, you got to have a cute word for it. But also happens on Threads, which I understand is struggling a little bit. And they're scratching their heads over there at, what do they call themselves now? Meta, trying to figure out how do we, how is it that we are the most popular app launch in history, and now everybody is bored with it and running away? I don't know where they're going. But is it a flash in the pan kind of a thing? Maybe. I mean, these things happen with apps, even from the big companies. They put things out. People don't care very much. They go away. Google has littered the trail with abandoned projects that they thought were a great idea, or some developer, and they were not wrong. The developer wanted to use such a thing. It's just people use their computers differently, and it doesn't always catch on. And sometimes the dumbest things catch on. So you never know. No fault, I don't think, on that front. But at any rate, Threads continues. So if you're on there, you'll be getting notice from Mighty OCD each day that we are live and on the air, or at least each day that he remembers, just like each day that I remember to tell people that this is happening. So, where were we? Yes, Justice was also signaling what's on his mind this morning. Let me just check out what's going on here. Let's see. Where are the people threatening judges and prosecutors and juries in Hunter's case? Yeah, that's a good observation, of course. We're now all used to that being the case on Donald Trump trials, that jurors and judges and prosecutors will all receive death threats. Another good reason not to hold a jury trial, by the way, in the fraud trial in New York. Fewer people that have to worry about death threats. And noticeable absence of those threats in the Hunter Biden cases. Maybe it's not a symmetrical picture of both sides. That would be an interesting thing to cover. What else have we here? The Kraken lady is finding out what it feels like to be a squid. Well, I'm not certain I know exactly what's going on there. I know the Kraken lady would be Sidney Powell, and she's probably losing badly about saying, why? A squid, some lesser form of Kraken, I suppose. I'm not certain exactly what's up in the news with her, but we can check in on that. And if we don't, or we don't get to it, or whatever, in all likelihood, it's something. Remember that this will be covered in all likelihood. I don't know if it makes the cut for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy following our show right here, 11 a.m. Eastern time, and whatever the hell else it is, wherever you live. I don't know. I can't keep track of time for everybody. Greenwich Mean Time, it's like 37 o'clock or something like that. But stay tuned. Just listen to this show, and then everything that we leave out, Justice Putnam covers on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have to switch channels or anything, if that's even a thing that you do with computer radios. Who even knows? At any rate, let's see. Other things to catch up on. Well, who cares what there is to catch up on? Let's find new things to be concerned about, or extremely old things. I have been collecting stories this morning via the social medias and having thoughts about them, including this one, which struck me yesterday as Greg was telling us about the Nobel Prize for Medicine having been awarded to the genius scientists behind the development of the mRNA vaccine process. And it occurred to me that, it was interesting. I don't know why also missing, I guess, just like there are no people leveling threats against the judges and jurors and prosecutors in the Hunter Biden cases. I'm puzzled by the absence of celebration among MAGA types. They were so thrilled to be out there pushing back against the establishment when they were guzzling their fish tanks and eating horse paste and experimenting with various treatments. Sure that there were, lone scientists out there on whom they were depending, taking brave stances against the medical, scientific, pharmaceutical, and academic establishments because they were sure they were right and that, yes, all the weight of the evidence was against them, but they were on to something and they were going to show everybody that they alone had pushed back against all of the gatekeepers and found the cure for COVID or for whatever else might be ailing you. And they were very attracted to this story. But as it turns out, it didn't really have anything to do with getting better or preventing themselves from getting COVID anyway. Because, as it turns out, the real story that they were looking for of pushing back against the establishment because you were sure you were right and you were onto something, turns out it was in fact these scientists who were working on mRNA vaccines. And I'm curious as to why they're not out there celebrating the lone operator pushing back against the behemoths, saying no, standing athwart history, etc., etc. But it turns out that only applies to them, and the things they believe are awesome. So, there's a ready-made story out there for them. I just don't know why they're not particularly interested in reading about it. All right, let's see. Other interesting developments from the morning, and there are many. One, of course, this was going to happen. There's a new Clarence Thomas corruption has dropped today, as the kids say. Oh, I got an as the kids say story for you at some point. But as the kids say, this has dropped. The news this time, let me not get distracted from the actual news, comes from the American Prospect, who puts it out this way under this headline: Clarence Thomas has yet another huge conflict of interest. Now, hold on a second. I have to get around the paywall that isn't a paywall from the American Prospect. They're, very politely reminding everybody that you should be donating in support of their work. And that's true. You should be donating to about 150 million different important outlets. There's no clearinghouse for this sort of thing. I don't know. Well, anyway, Clarence Thomas has yet another huge conflict of interest. The Revolving Door Project research reveals that right-wing elites in the Horatio Alger Association, remember them? That was the rags to riches organization, rags to riches, what would you call it? Narrative promoting association that Clarence Thomas was revealed to be pretty much wrapped up in by some of the ProPublica reporting, as I recall. And I was having trouble remembering it the other day, and I did get prompted afterwards. It's Horatio Alger, yes, but it's right here in the American Prospect reporting. All right, well, let's see. Right-wing elites in the Horatio Alger Association stand to benefit from a lawsuit, attempting to destroy the CFPB, that in front of the Supreme Court right now, I think. As a matter of fact, or at least this term. The group has close ties to Clarence Thomas. This reported by Vishal Shankar and dated yesterday, although I was pretty sure I had seen it over the weekend. But, sometimes these advanced publications bring things out a little earlier. And, let's catch up on what it is, because I don't want to get too far behind. It's hard to read these lengthy articles all the time about Clarence Thomas and know exactly how corrupt he is at any given time before they drop another one on you. On Tuesday, that's now, today. Oh, okay, so that's the answer. It is happening now. The Supreme Court will hear oral arguments in Consumer Financial Protection Bureau versus Community Financial Services Association of America, a lawsuit filed by predatory payday lenders. This is the American Prospect explaining it, seeking to strike down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's independent funding mechanism, and, by extension, the Bureau itself. No funding, no Bureau, right? The case, in which the agency is appealing a far-right Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling last October, always the Fifth Circuit, right, could have catastrophic impacts if the Roberts Court sides with payday lender plaintiffs. As the Prospect's David Dayen has noted, always pay attention to what David has to say, the other one. The Fifth Circuit's ruling threatens the functioning of daily life, as its radical interpretation of the Constitution's appropriations clause would gut not only the CFPB, triggering a 2008-like mortgage market meltdown. Well, it'd be good news for finding topics to report on for David Dayen, but everybody else suffers. But it will also mean that many other regulatory agencies and federal programs without traditional appropriations, including Medicare. Anyone heard of it? Social Security. And the Federal Reserve, which seems like it's kind of important maybe in some economic way. An obvious backdrop to this high-stakes case is the mounting ethics scandal of the court's conservative justices. Take, for instance, the other guy, Samuel Alito. Hedge fund billionaire Paul Singer, who took Alito on a luxury Alaska fishing trip, holds at least $90 million in financial companies overseen by the CFPB, and Alito has thus far failed, surprisingly enough, to recuse himself from the case. My goodness. The ethics conflicts are even worse for Justice Clarence Thomas, who has also failed to recuse. If there's ever anybody who's, if you need somebody who has failed something, you can look to these two. One of the two of them, if not both of them, will fail. According to ProPublica, Thomas has secretly attended at least 2 donor events for conservative billionaire Charles Koch's political advocacy organization and is seen as a fundraising draw for the Koch network. Americans for Prosperity Foundation, one of the Koch empire's many advocacy arms, has filed an amicus brief in CFPB versus CFSA, calling the Bureau a threat to liberty. I just like that. Every time we see liberty from now on. Okay, it's a threat to liberty and a mockery of the separation of powers. No music for that one, I guess. Another anti-CFPB amicus filer in the case is none other than John Eastman. Why not? He gets music. John Eastman, don't forget his Claremont Institute connection, given the scary story we were trying to shoehorn in, I think, at the end of Monday's show. Is that right? Anyway, John Eastman, who is, of course, not just an evil weirdo, but also a former Thomas law clerk, who is currently facing disbarment proceedings and a criminal indictment for trying to help Donald Trump overturn the 2020 election results. Eastman has previously tried to leverage his connections with Thomas to his benefit, corresponding with Thomas's wife, Ginny, a notably unhinged electoral fraud conspiracy theorist. I didn't have to add that. That was actually here, parenthetically, in the run-up to the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. Even Thomas's most well-known benefactor, Dallas-based developer Harlan Crow, has much to gain from a favorable outcome in the CFPB versus CFSA case. Crow and his real estate empire are among the most prominent backers of the National Multifamily Housing Council, a landlord lobbying group that has mobilized industry opposition to the Bureau's scrutiny of the tenant screening industry. On top of all these egregious violations of elementary judicial ethics, our research revealed another ethics controversy surrounding Thomas and the CFPB versus CFSA case that has thus far escaped close scrutiny. But now we're capturing you and giving you close scrutiny, I guess. It concerns Thomas's central role in the Horatio Alger Association, an exclusive circle of wealthy business elites that gave Thomas lavish, undisclosed gifts. In return, Thomas has granted the Alger Association rare annual private use of the Supreme Court chambers, you learned this from ProPublica, for its new member induction ceremony, an event that Thomas personally hosts every year. The Alger Association has publicly promoted the Thomas-hosted Supreme Court ceremony in its fundraising materials, an act frowned upon by court officials. According to a review of the Alger Association's members conducted by the Revolving Door Project, at least 18 Alger members have either previously expressed an interest in weakening the CFPB or stand to gain from the court gutting the Bureau. These wealthy elites span multiple sectors overseen by the CFPB and include some of its most prominent recurring opponents. Among them is Alger Association President Gregory Abel, A-B-E-L, a top executive at Berkshire Hathaway, of course. I mean, they're going to be opposed, I imagine, who has been named by Berkshire CEO Warren Buffett as his eventual successor. Abel was inducted into the Alger Association at a Thomas-hosted Supreme Court ceremony in 2018 and plays an active role in the organization's leadership, serving as a class coordinator that provides invaluable networking support to Alger members. Berkshire Hathaway, which may soon be led by Abel, would likely welcome a weakened CFPB. In 2022, the CFPB and Department of Justice secured a $22 million settlement from Berkshire subsidiary Trident Mortgage for illegally redlining majority-minority neighborhoods in Philadelphia. This was not the first time a Berkshire subsidiary attracted scrutiny for violating consumer protection laws. In 2016, several Democratic lawmakers called upon the CFPB to investigate Berkshire's mobile home subsidiary, Clayton Homes, for discriminatory lending and collection practices. The Department of Housing and Urban Development opened a fair housing investigation into the company in 2018. Another Alger member whose subsidiary has run afoul of the CFPB is John Canning, co-founder of private equity firm Madison Dearborn Partners. Just pause and rewind for just a second. This thought occurred to me. Where do you think most, Clayton homes are mobile homes? Where do you think most mobile home usage is happening? And do you think that it is happening in places where the people who live in the mobile homes feel that they are and understand that they are beneficiaries of the intervention of the Department of Housing and Urban Development? Yes, it's housing. It's mostly more rural housing than anything else. If not purely rural, it's certainly suburban, ex-urban, and rural is where I think mobile home usage skews. And in all likelihood, the residents would consider themselves to be outside the purview of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, because urban, it's others, yikes. And so, get rid of that. And yet here they are, the beneficiaries of HUD's work. And they should probably take note of that, but they're probably not listening. But if you have a chance to speak with some of them, perhaps a fact might be interesting to them. Maybe not. Anyway, where were we? Right, back to John Canning, someone else who has run afoul of CFPB, the co-founder of private equity firm Madison Dearborn Partners. Canning's firm announced its acquisition of fintech company, financial technology, fintech. Do they say fine? I mean, it should be financial, but fintech, that seems weird. Anyway, what company? MoneyGram. In February of 2022, in a $1.8 billion deal. Did they MoneyGram the money? They probably didn't. That just shows that they just don't even trust the product. I would be out of that deal in an instant. Anyway, 2 months later, the CFPB and New York Attorney General sued MoneyGram, which they labeled a repeat offender of consumer protection laws for failing to process customers' remittance payments and disputes in a timely manner. MoneyGram has shown little sign of mending its ways since the acquisition was completed earlier this year. In recent court filings, the company has openly cited the Fifth Circuit's ruling against the CFPB's funding structure in an attempt to dismiss the Bureau's ongoing enforcement case against it. Former U.S. Chamber of Commerce CEO and current board member Tom Donahue, board of the Horatio Alger Society, I guess, is a strident opponent of CFPB dating back to even before it existed. A current Alger member whose group has filed an amicus brief supporting the payday lenders. Under Donahue, the group lobbied against the CFPB's creation in a 2010 Dodd-Frank law and consistently supported what the payday lenders will argue on Tuesday, that the Bureau's independent funding mechanism should be struck down and its annual budget should instead be approved by Congress. Boo-hoo. The latter argument is particularly compelling for fans of deregulation, as the House of Representatives is currently controlled by industry bankrolled Republicans who have promised to defund it. Under both Donahue and his successor, Suzanne Clark, also a board member at CFPB repeat offender TransUnion, the Chamber of Commerce has also opposed many of the CFPB's consumer protection regulatory initiatives, including efforts to rein in arbitration clauses and credit card junk fees. Earlier this month, the group notched its own victory against the CFPB when a district court judge upheld its lawsuit challenging the Bureau's crackdown on discrimination in consumer financial markets. Anytime CFPB finds you possibly cheating and screwing people over and tries to get in the way, they'll be pushing back, I guess is what the theme here is. Then there are the many Wall Street executives who fill out the Alger Association's ranks, all of whom would likely love to see the CFPB weakened. These include current and former bankers like Bharat Masrani of TD Bank, fined over $97 million by CFPB in 2020 for illegal overdraft fees. Brian Lamb, not of C-SPAN, but of JP Morgan Chase. The guys share the same name? Is that right? Anyway, a repeat offender fined multiple times for illegal mortgage kickbacks, inaccurate account screening, and illegal robo-signing. Josue Robles of USAA fined over $15 million in 2019 for mishandling fund transfers and customer accounts. And the recently investigated T. Denny Stanford of First Premier Bank, which previously sued the CFPB for cracking down on excessive credit card fees. Many of these banks are active members of the Consumer Bankers Association, an industry lobbying group that has opposed the CFPB's crackdown on banking junk fees. Their contempt for consumer protection is shared by other prominent business leaders who are also in the Alger Association. David Wilson, CEO of one of the largest car dealerships in the country, is a member of several industry trade groups that have opposed CFPB's auto lending guidance and called for changes to its funding structure. J. Ronald Terwilliger is the chairman emeritus of Harlan Crow's family real estate company and has given over $16,000 to the landlord lobbying group NMHC since 1989. It's a long list of people. There's more. Home Depot founder and Republican mega donor Bernie Marcus has actively supported challenges to the Biden administration's student debt relief plan and has claimed the Dodd-Frank law hurts small businesses like Home Depot. So tiny. Insider trading hedge fund tycoon and president of the Alger Endowment Fund, Leon Cooperman, best known for crying about Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax on national television, has previously held stakes in a student loan servicer that was sued by the CFPB. So some real rogues gallery here behind this lawsuit.
Sup fam, it's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're a little more than halfway, it looks like, from the slider on the side here through this article, but I assume the bottom of the page is occupied by some other graphic elements. So we'll continue on here. This is some lineup, and it's a good idea, I think, to read some of these names out loud and see if we can remember them when they come up later, when there's more specifics about just how corrupt, let's say, Clarence Thomas turns out to be, and some of these names are connected to more overt acts of corruption later on. Now, perhaps least shy about expressing his hatred for the CFPB is Phil Gramm. Remember that guy? The former Texas senator and co-author of the 1999 financial deregulation law that partly repealed the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933 and helped cause the 2008 financial crisis. Unashamed after helping blow up the global economy, because there were no consequences for him, Graham, who revolved out of Congress to become a banker, has testified before Congress criticizing the CFPB's leadership structure and funding mechanism, with occasional assistance from monopoly apologist and ex-FTC Commissioner Christine Wilson. Graham has also repeatedly attacked CFPB Director Rohit Chopra from the Wall Street Journal editorial page. The corporate elites and right-wing ideologues who populate the Alger Association's membership roster clearly have a lot to gain from gutting CFPB. Clarence Thomas has enjoyed the comically elitist connections and lavish undisclosed gifts of the Alger Association for over 30 years. Are we really to believe that Thomas never once discussed issues of financial regulation and corporate law enforcement during decades of hobnobbing with America's top bankers, investors, and lenders behind closed doors? Please. The fact that Thomas did not fully disclose his Alger activities and gifts from the very beginning, or the other Caligula-esque largesse, okay, maybe, that he has received from other billionaire patrons, all while carefully constructing an aw shucks persona as a guy who prefers to hang out in Walmart parking lots in his RV, a very expensive one at that, speaks for itself. Though we at Revolving Door Project call for Thomas's and Alito's recusal from this case in light of these ethics scandals, the court's well-established contempt for accountability and integrity offers little hope they will heed our advice, should both of them persist in hearing the CFPB versus CFSA case on Tuesday, despite their glaring conflicts of interest. The case for their impeachment and for rebalancing the court to create an ethical majority will become even stronger. The humorist Will Rogers once noted that America has the best politicians money can buy. It appears that we have the best judges, too. Well, the best purchasable ones anyway, or the most easily purchasable. And thank God for all of the financial deregulation has made these purchases so much easier and lowered the tax on the transactions, I guess. Okay, we made it there, and, well, good. That's good news. I don't know what this thing is here at the bottom of, I guess this is Knowledge Tracker, Supreme Court. I suppose this is weird, like a little progress bar you make from progress from 0 to 1,000 based on the reading of this article. This gives me 73 knowledge points, according to the prospect. That's interesting. And if I'll just read some more of the articles that they suggest down here, I will get an even higher score. And then I'll have 1,000, and then they'll put me on the Supreme Court, and I'll be able to change. I don't know what happens if you reach 1,000, but that's an interesting gimmick. I like it. It might work to drive people to read more about it. Very interesting. Just thought that was good background given that they are going to be hearing the case today. That makes it current news. So good on us. There's other current news you may wish to pay attention to, but I'm de-emphasizing it for a reason. Of course, Matt Gaetz made made a motion to call up his resolution. We want to keep things technically correct here. Made a motion to call up his resolution to declare the chair vacant, the speakership's chair, I guess, vacant. The office of the speaker is, what you're actually aiming at here. And, right, remember your procedure. He's only entitled at this point to make that motion. He is not a leadership member or a leadership designee. So, although this is a privileged motion, the privilege is not exactly the highest, just as it would be for any backbencher making a motion, say, directly proposing the impeachment of the president. Similarly privileged, but that doesn't mean it gets immediate consideration. And what you have instead is you make the motion, and leadership has, I think, 2 days to schedule debate on the motion to take up, or I guess no, what happens is he makes the motion, and the motion, nothing happens, but they get, they'll get an hour's, if I recall correctly what happens with those things, they'll get an hour's debate on the motion to take up this resolution. And the first decision, that will be made as well, one, whether anybody moves to table the resolution or table the motion to take up the resolution, or I guess that could have been done yesterday, but maybe, I guess, Yeah, I'll have to brush up on exactly what is the procedure here. But if he's making the motion and they have 2 days, I guess you make the motion and they have 2 days to schedule debate on the resolution itself. Okay, and then at that point you can move to table the resolution or actually take up consideration and have a vote on the resolution, the two possible things. But, I'm de-emphasizing it because it's just not something that's actually likely to go anywhere, despite the very attractive and eye-popping, I guess, headline promoted over at the Hill. Gaetz's GOP support could put McCarthy's speakership in Democrats' hands. That doesn't mean that a Democrat will become Speaker of the House. It means, ironically enough, that the support, the very, very narrow support that Gaetz's resolution actually has among Republicans is, in combination with the votes of every Democrat in the House, capable of unseating McCarthy, but not capable of, Gaetz's Republican support isn't going to be involved in putting a Democrat in the speakership. Unless they have, I guess it's possible that they're so angry and embittered and nihilist, which would be amazing, for them to be like, well, what would really drive a stake through the heart of the McCarthyites would be for us to hand over control of the House to Democrats. And we feel safe in doing it because the rules are that we can always bring a motion to vacate the speakership and get rid of the Democrat we don't like the minute he does something, Democrat-ish. And I don't know. That would be very stupid, but think about who's doing the work here. So anyway, the amazing thing of all this, of course, is one, that Gaetz has been so open and vocal about his reasoning for doing this. I want to vacate the Speaker's office because the Speaker worked with Democrats to pass a bill. That definitely deserves dramatic music. And of course, working with Democrats, that used to be, you used to have to kind of play the role and say occasionally that working with the other side of the aisle for important business on behalf of the country was a good thing. Republicans now, of course, are so crazy that they are perfectly willing to say out loud that it is an impeachable or expellable offense to be caught working with the other side of the aisle, which is, quite frankly, pretty amazing that we've gotten to this point, and gives away a lot of the game. But it's doubly ironic, of course, because Matt Gaetz, one, has nothing close to majority support among Republicans for this move, and it only works if he is able to marry his rump Freedom Caucus gang to the entire Democratic caucus and amass enough votes to thereby declare the chair vacant. So in other words, he'd be punishing McCarthy for the crime of working with Democrats, and it's only doable if he works with Democrats. But, as we know, he's a gimmitarian, hypocrite, idiot, so I don't think that's going to disturb him at all. And, that puts the rest of the world behind the eight ball. If you have a guy who's completely shameless and has no, no shame, what's the word I'm thinking here? Why am I blanking on this word? At any rate, but somebody who just doesn't care at all about this sort of thing and has no shame in being a hypocrite about it, that's an extra tool in his kit that the rest of us don't have. Well, let's see. What Emily Brooks and Michael Schnell have written here for The Hill under this wacky headline, Gaetz's GOP support could put McCarthy's speakership in Democrats' hands. Fresh off averting a government shutdown, House members on both sides of the aisle are being thrust into the second historic speakership battle in a year, forcing Democrats to confront a big political decision. We've talked about which one it is. You know already, but let's go on with it. Representative Matt Gaetz on Monday moved to force a vote on ousting Speaker Kevin McCarthy, largely based on the handling of a clean continuing resolution to keep the government open Saturday. It's not entirely clean, but P.S. another, hypocrisy story was, I'm so old I remember when Republicans used to insist that the only CRs that should ever be allowed to be brought to the floor would be the clean CRs. And now, things so far gone that Gaetz's big complaint is that the CR that came to the floor was relatively clean, even though it really wasn't. But it wasn't dirtied up by a long list of his demands for concessions from Democrats or forcing cuts through or what have you. He wanted to complicate the issue, make the bill that much bigger and more complicated and unreadable. And time was that Republicans used to insist on the opposite. But that's just basically, they were insisting on the opposite of whatever was being presented to them. And now they do the same thing. Present them with a clean one, they want a dirty one instead. Anyway, it marks just the third attempt in House history to remove a sitting speaker, following an unsuccessful move against Speaker Joe Cannon in 1910, and one against Speaker John Boehner in 2015 that was also unsuccessful, but contributed to his later resignation. Just a reminder for the record, it's happened 3 times against 3 speakers. Joseph Cannon, Republican of Illinois, John Boehner, Republican of Ohio, and now Kevin McCarthy, Republican of California. Who governs in this country? Not them. At least 4 House Republicans said they will support or are leaning in favor of the motion to vacate. Again, all this news coverage in exchange for 4 House Republicans have said they want to do this. That's the majority party in the House of Representatives. They get to control the speakership and who occupies it. 4 of them will support Matt Gaetz. And assuming that one of them wasn't Matt Gaetz, that's 5 votes for, and they may get more. That's true. But we're all talking about something that 4 or 5 House Republicans support. And yeah, it depends a lot, entirely, really, on what Democrats will do. But I think we're quickly coming to the conclusion that they will look for ways not to be particularly involved. So what you're talking about here is all of this noise that's going on. In the end, you may see a vote taken, and we'll talk about what the vote will be, but the vote measuring support, in theory anyway, for Gaetz's resolution to vacate the chair may net fewer than 20 votes out of the 435 available in the House. Although, I don't know, is anybody, any seats vacant that I don't know about? Maybe. So that's not going to be a whole lot. And on the other hand, I mean, it may net some additional ones, knowing that it's not going anywhere. There may be a few people who say, oh, I'd like to make a statement here, but I know that it's not going to result in chaos in the House, nor will it, in fact, unseat Kevin McCarthy. So I might take a freebie on this one. Although, honestly, it's still a dangerous step, because the guy is still going to be speaker at the end of the day, and he could still take it out on you if you participate in this exercise. Anyway, at least a whopping 4 House Republicans say that they will support, or are leaning, maybe I'll support it, in favor of the motion to vacate. It is, in fact, a resolution to vacate. In the slim House majority, just a handful of Republican lawmakers could be enough to push the speaker out, entirely depending, really, on how Democrats vote. That means where Democrats stand is the wild card that could determine whether McCarthy holds on to the gavel or becomes the first speaker to be voted out. You should really only be thinking about the possibility of his being voted out if there was unanimity among Democrats about what to do, and there isn't. If there was, that would have been announced a long time ago, and the likelihood of the unanimous decision among Democrats to support this thing and thereby empower Matt Gaetz in some fashion is extremely unlikely. But you would need, so with just 4 or 5 Republicans saying they're thinking about it, you'd need every single Democrat. And if there's something coming up that every single Democrat is going to be voting not in lockstep, but, in unison about, you would know that ahead of time. People would be talking about that. And they're not. Because there's no effort on the Democratic side to corral everyone. It's not an issue of importance. It's not a likely outcome. It's not a good outcome. So there's not any effort to bring everybody on board. That's what would be necessary. Anyway, if they all surprise, show up to vote in unison to vacate the chair in a fit of pique against Republicans, then the 4 or 5 or 20 even weirdo lunatics on the Republican side might get what they want temporarily. So let's see. The hardliners, it says here, are split on McCarthy. Representatives Andy Biggs, one who said the January 6th guys were all tourists, right? I think, is that him? Eli Crane, Arizona, and Bob Good of Virginia said on Monday they would support Gaetz's move. I said repeatedly in January that we cannot repeat the failures of the past when Republicans have majority control, that we pass our major spending bills with predominantly Democrat votes, Good said. For the speaker to totally surrender and capitulate on Saturday to pass an unconditional CR, it's not at all unconditional, with 209 Democrat votes and all votes in the Senate was a bad deal for the American people, except surprisingly they had majority support and overwhelming support in the Senate, and I guess the American people were kind of maybe sort of in the republic sense for it. Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee said that he was praying about it, so, answers forthcoming, no doubt. But that his conscience, which is, I guess, different from what he's praying about, was telling him to vote to oust McCarthy. He later said on CNN that he would support Gaetz's move if it was right now, like if it was right now, or if it was right now. I'm not certain. And did not see that changing over the next 2 days. I don't know what that means. So who knows? God's going to tell him what to do. That number could tick up as other possible supporters of removing McCarthy have not expressly articulated their positions and might not even be capable of articulating anything. Representative Dan Bishop of North Carolina expressed support for McCarthy's ouster earlier this year, but declined to comment on Monday. And Matt Rosendale of Montana, who never voted in favor of McCarthy in January's 15 ballot speaker election, said he would consider it, but other hardline conservatives who were part of the group of 20 members who withheld support for McCarthy in January are supporting the speaker. Byron Donalds of Florida and Chip Roy of Texas both voiced opposition to the move on Sean Hannity's radio show on Monday. Interesting. Chip Roy of the Speakers Committee chiming in. I think it's a major distraction. It's going to take all the focus away from appropriations, Donalds said. Sure. Gaetz has cited the lack of movement on full-year appropriations bills as the chief reason to remove McCarthy. So let's distract from the effort to get one across the finish line a little late, right? The move to oust McCarthy also raises questions about who his opponents would accept to replace him. Gaetz on Monday brought up the number 2 House Republican, Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who was diagnosed with multiple myeloma in August. It is awkward to talk about names until we understand how Mr. Scalise comes out of his treatment for blood cancer, Gaetz said. I am not the type of person, let's hear this one, who just says that you blow by somebody because they're getting a medical treatment. Oh, okay. Scalise, though, posted on social media Monday in support of McCarthy, as did House Majority Whip Tom Emmer of Minnesota, House GOP Conference Chairwoman Elise Stefanik of New York, and a swath of other McCarthy allies. We have a lot of work to do. Now is not the time for distractions, Scalise said. Now the big decision for Democrats, treated here. Depending on absences, just 5 GOP votes in favor of booting McCarthy as Speaker could put the onus on Democrats. I mean, it's not us. It's not our proposal. There's no onus. They could affect the outcome, but it's not an onus. Go away. And keep your onus to yourself, frankly. House Minority Whip Catherine Clark of Massachusetts sent a letter to House Democrats on Sunday morning informing members that if a motion to vacate is offered against McCarthy, the group will have a caucus-wide discussion on how to address the motion to best meet the needs, or neat the needs, if necessary, of the American people. House, that means that highfalutin rhetoric that means we don't know. What do you think we ought to do? I don't know. Just let everybody do what they're going to do. Some people are going to want to vote yes, and some people are going to want to vote no, and some people are going to want to vote present, and some are going to want to absent themselves. And it doesn't much matter. Do what you want to do, because they're not going to amass enough votes to do it. As long as we have question marks about this and we're not approaching it as a caucus with the same vote in mind. House Democrats are scheduled to huddle during their weekly caucus meeting Tuesday morning. That'd probably be now. We're about now anyway. Democrats could allow McCarthy to remain in the speakership without voting for him directly by voting present or not voting at all. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has been coy about the caucus's plans for a potential motion to vacate, brushing aside questions as hypotheticals and insisting that the group will cross that bridge when it gets there. We're focused on doing the business of the American people, Jeffries told reporters on Monday, shortly before Gaetz moved to force that vote. The importance of Democrats has prompted speculation that McCarthy could offer something to lawmakers across the aisle, such as an adjustment in committee assignment ratios or increasing the threshold to force a motion to vacate in order to secure their support. One House Democrat told The Hill that the price for Democrats to save McCarthy, who just a month ago launched an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, is not cheap. McCarthy said Monday that he has not talked to Jeffries about what to do about the motion to vacate, but he did not directly answer a question about whether he would cut a deal with Democrats to save his speakership. I think this is about the institution. I think it's too important, McCarthy said. I'm not even sure what that's supposed to mean. Democrats, for their part, have been all over the map publicly, which is why, really, I mean, honestly, if I'm McCarthy, I'd probably be like, well, no deal cutting is necessary. I don't need to make an offer. They're just not going to vacate the speakership. They're not. And that would be true. And you don't need to cut a deal, and you shouldn't look for anything. And if you're worried that, Democrats as usual will be absent, will be AWOL when they could be getting a big concession out of this, I mean, I just don't really think so. First, you'd have to organize the entire caucus behind the motion to vacate in order to make it dangerous, but for McCarthy, so that he would offer you something. But by the same token, you are also inviting great danger for Democratic interests by vacating the chair and having, in the middle of a 45, what do we have, like 40-something days on the clock until the next shutdown, as we explained yesterday, and as many of you knew beforehand. And it just makes things worse and basically guarantees another shutdown crisis, which usually Republicans use to leverage something out of Democrats. So the idea of perpetuating that situation so that Republicans could later leverage something out of Democrats in exchange for keeping the government operating seems like kind of a dumb place to be. The Democratic leadership, if they're not going to organize the entirety of the caucus behind one answer and I mean the entirety of the caucus behind one answer on vacating the speakership, then it's not worth doing anything at all. It's not worth spending any time on it or any effort on it. You want to meet so that you can discuss what's going to happen on the floor and let everybody know what the consequences are. But beyond that, no organizing behind it. And McCarthy, there's not much this guy knows inherently, but I guess the easiest thing for him to understand is lazy people will do less about organizing for all of this. And you can probably count on, as a default position, inertia. among Democrats, and they'll let you know if they're going to organize against you. They'll be open about it, and basically they're saying, we're not organizing anything. So the likelihood of 200 of them getting together on one single page and ousting him from the speakership and landing in, the world of the unknown is pretty unlikely. All right. Well, anyway, like I said, Democrats, for their part, have been all over the map publicly. Adam Schiff, whom McCarthy booted from the Intelligence Committee, told reporters on Monday, I prefer someone who has some level of trust, and he has none with our caucus, and he has none within his own caucus. That's a good point. He signaled that he'll follow Jeffries' lead, adding the Republicans really need to figure out how to clean up their own mess. The one thing Democrats and Republicans have in common vis-a-vis the speaker is none of us trust him to do the right thing or keep his word, Schiff added. That's largely true, but we were going to feel that way anyway. It's actually the Republicans' job to feel like they trust him. In olden days, you felt better about trusting the word of the speaker. He wasn't your person. You didn't install him or her in the speakership if it was a member of the other party, but you generally felt like, well, they're not going to just be a Donald Trump level liar and go back on their word every single time. Well, let's see. Other opinions are solicited here. Representative Ann McLean Custer, did you say Custer, of New Hampshire, the chairwoman of the center-left New Democrat Coalition, said it would be a heavy lift for Democrats to save McCarthy. No, they just don't need to do anything. She pointed to McCarthy waiting until the last minute to fund the government, his breach of the debt limit deal that he struck with Biden, and launching the impeachment inquiry into the president. And Representative Matt Cartwright of Pennsylvania, an appropriator, told Fox News over the weekend that he will likely vote present, noting that McCarthy made a sensible decision to bring a clean continuing resolution to the floor. I would not take a position on that. I probably would just vote present. Cartwright said, this is not about the Democratic caucus. It's about the Republican conference and them choosing their leader, even though he's the leader of the entire House. And if they really want to throw out Kevin McCarthy for doing what I think is the sensible thing, I kind of regret that, but that's their business. Gaetz welcomed Democrats to save McCarthy if that's what they want. If the Democrats want to own Kevin McCarthy, they can have it, or would love to own him anyway. Gaetz said Monday night, because one thing I'm at peace with is when we stand here a week from now, I won't own Kevin McCarthy anymore. He won't belong to me. Yes, he will. So if the Democrats want to adopt him, they can adopt him, he added. Well, that's not the way it really works. Then a decision or a discussion of what happens next, but you've likely already learned that from other sources. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. One more segment to get through before the time arrives where we check in with Joan McCarter. And just because the government didn't shut down this week doesn't mean we're not counting down to the next government shutdown, So we'll check in on that and probably a little bit about Gaetz and his ridiculousness and what it really means. More time than we really needed to devote to this subject, but we're devoting our time to talking about how you don't have to pay any serious attention to what's going on here. See, we're aloof from all of this. What happens next was the next section of the Hills article. We do need to pay some attention to that, and we'll see how they put it. Since Gaetz raised the question of privilege to consider his resolution ousting McCarthy on Monday, the House now has 2 legislative days to consider it on the floor. But leadership has a number of ways to stymie the effort. Those include a motion to table the resolution or refer it to committee, procedural votes that could prevent the chamber from having to weigh in on McCarthy's speakership directly. If none of those efforts are successful, the House would then debate the resolution. How does it work? An hour dedicated to the thing. Probably they don't need a rule per se to go along with it, but probably an hour, possibly debated under the 5-minute rule, although I don't know what amendment would be possible to a motion to vacate. Maybe none. And so therefore it would probably be limited to the hour. And then after the debate of the actual resolution, a moment during which another motion to table it would likely be made, or to commit it, send it to committee. And I guess maybe that's it. You would have a motion to table it before debate began. Then after debate began, I guess he really could. I don't know, see why you couldn't table it afterwards. But I think the preferred motion at that point would be to refer it to committee. But another delaying effort or derailing effort. And then if all of that fails for some reason, and that's something that Democrats could decide to do. Well, we'll vote with Gaetz on the question of whether or not there should be actual debate on the resolution. And we won't table it and we won't send it to committee. But then we'll have a vote on the actual resolution itself and just, absent ourselves or vote present or vote no and blow the whole thing up. But if you want to spend all day wasting your time on it, that's fine with us. And then we, in substance, do not support the underlying resolution. I guess that's a possibility. So we'll see. Then lastly, some discussion of personal animosity. McCarthy has said several times that Gaetz's campaign against him is personal, noting the Florida congressman whom the Justice Department declined to charge after a lengthy sex trafficking investigation is facing another investigation by the House Ethics Committee. Anytime that somebody has an ethics complaint and they can't get the way they want about it, they want to roll up and one side is going to park with 5 people and decide that. I don't think that's good for the House, McCarthy said Monday. I'm not even sure what he's saying, but he's saying Gaetz is not good for the House, basically. CNN host Jake Tapper asked Gaetz on Sunday how much of his move against McCarthy was personal and a response to the ethics investigation, saying that he had seen personal communications between Gaetz and others in which Gaetz blamed McCarthy for the ethics investigation. Gaetz said the ethics investigation has nothing to do with his decision, but indicated that he thinks McCarthy influenced the investigation. It seems that the ethics committee is interested in me. It seems that the ethics committee is interested in me. I think what he means is that the ethics committee's interest in him waxes and wanes based on my relationship with the speaker, Gaetz told reporters on Monday. That would be interesting. I mean, I guess it's always possible, but it would be amazing given that McCarthy has lost control of the Speaker's committee, that being the Rules Committee, and instead become extraordinarily interested in the Ethics Committee, which generally speaking has almost nothing to do with him, and everybody's begging not to be put on the Ethics Committee. But although sometimes the Speaker exercises a certain amount of control over the Ethics Committee in that since he usually can't find anybody to be on it, he either puts his friends on there because they agree to do him a favor, or he finds people who are willing to do it and consider it a favor to the Speaker, and the Speaker owes them for agreeing to serve on this very unpopular committee. But it's not really, considered one that's under the Speaker's control. So Gaetz is out of his mind and has not, no basis in reality there. Anyway, let's see. Even if the first attempt to boot McCarthy fails, Gaetz says there will be plenty more to come. It took Speaker McCarthy 15 votes to become the Speaker, Gaetz said, so until I get to 14 or 15, I don't think I'm being any more dilatory than he was. That's an interesting way of putting it. McCarthy, for his part, is projecting confidence. Bring it on, he wrote Monday night on X, as they like to say, formerly known as Twitter. I just like to say he wrote it on Twitter. I'm sorry I even referred to it as X. Okay, so now you've, once again, you're up to speed on this. Yeah, they try to tease this as something that the Democrats will likely be major players in. They're not, until they decide to be, until they organize and say, we're going to play a part in this and we want, as a caucus, to be a part of it. It's just going to be left up to individuals, and you're never going to be able to, very unlikely that you'll be able to put together the necessary votes to do that without an effort at organizing Democrats as a caucus. So let's see. Other things to check in on. There are others, and we'll leave, we'll leave any further investigation of that and shutdown watch and what's in the CR, etc. And of course, free reign to go in any direction she wants to Joan. I will share with you some other items worthy of attention. Let's go this direction and borrow from Rolling Stone, for which, let's see, we'll probably have to depend on the pocket edition, if you will, of what's going on here. But Aswin Subsang on the byline here, along with the first name on the byline in this story, Adam Rawnsley, alerting us to a story of some note that we should keep an eye on to stay ahead of. Prosecutors probe Trump's efforts to steal Arizona's election years after he lost. Sort of another branch of the same story, of course, that's being prosecuted in several jurisdictions. But the Arizona story offers a slightly different angle. Investigators are asking about Trump world efforts to undermine Arizona's 2020 election results as recently as last year. In other words, they've stretched this effort out well beyond the window during which they really thought they had a chance to do anything. But I don't know what, out of inertia, I guess, kept going with this. Let's see what they're highlighting here. Prosecutors in Arizona are probing the extent to which Donald Trump and his allies were still working behind the scenes to reverse the results of the 2020 presidential election, years into Joe Biden's presidency. According to two people with knowledge of the situation, investigators with the Arizona Attorney General's office are inquiring about efforts to overturn the election that continued well into 2021 and 22. And you might at that point start wondering how much of it is about laying the groundwork for overturning things in 24, should that become necessary. The sources say that investigators have asked about a 2022 pressure campaign from Trump allies aimed at decertifying the state's electors and inquired about how deeply the former president and his senior advisors were involved in supporting Arizona Republicans' privately run 2021 election audit, or as we call it, fraudit, right? In May, Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays' office opened an investigation into a Trump-backed effort by Arizona Republicans to put forth a bogus slate of electors, you know all about that, sworn to support the former president when it came time to cast Arizona's electoral college votes. Not that it would matter because they weren't actually members of the electoral college, but that was the fraud. So this happened in May. The Attorney General has opened an investigation, state investigation into this. But investigators have recently been asking questions that indicate an interest in efforts to overturn the 2020 election that took place well after Biden's inauguration. In the months since Mays' office, and it's Mays, how was this pronounced? And I don't even know who the Attorney General is. I mean, the name is here, but I don't know anything about them, and it's Kris, and I don't know, is that, I don't know the gender. I don't know anything about the person. And maybe I need to look at this and see if I can find out more information so I understand who I'm talking about. Okay. So yes, Chris K-A-Y, Mayes, M-A-Y-E-S. And so Mays' office, you can see how it's difficult to get the wording out, but K-R-I-S is Kristen K. Mayes, who is currently the Arizona Attorney General. Everybody now understands this, and now I'm up to speed. And by the way, Mayes is the second woman elected Arizona Attorney General after Janet Napolitano, the third openly lesbian woman elected Attorney General of a state in the United States after Maura Healey and Dana Nessel, in case you were keeping track of that number, and the second openly LGBT person elected to statewide office in Arizona after Kyrsten Sinema. Okay? Got it? So, I don't know. Arizona churning them out here. If whatever them are. I don't know. Okay. Some interesting statistics, but good context. And of course, I'm sure a basis upon which she will be attacked by Donald Trump, notwithstanding the fact that she's also investigating the fake electors scandal. So, okay, let's read on. In the months since Mays's office, do you think there's an extra syllable in there, or do you think she's just Mays? Mays's office began investigating the fake electors plot. Sources say officials have interviewed individuals with intimate knowledge of internal Trump world discussions and solicited and reviewed documents circulated by Trump lieutenants and local allies related to those later efforts. In response to questions from Rolling Stone, a spokesperson for the Arizona Attorney General's office said they were unable to confirm these details and will have to decline to comment. So it's all reporting at this point, all investigative work. The 2022 campaign to overturn Arizona's election results, described by the sources, closely mirrors events reported on by the Arizona Republic. In that incident, senior Trump advisor Boris Epshteyn, bringing Boris back into the picture, phoned Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers in February of 2022 to urge his support for legislation drafted by far-right former state representative Mark Finchem. Fincham's bill, introduced after Arizona Republicans' own audit failed to challenge Joe Biden's victory in Arizona's largest county, aimed to decertify the state's 2020 slate of electors. In introducing the bill, Finchem himself appeared to acknowledge how unusual the legislation would be. There is no process under current law for the Arizona legislature to decertify an election, he wrote in a press release. Two sources tell Rolling Stone that investigators from the Attorney General's office have also inquired about funding that supported the 2021 audit of Maricopa County's vote. The review of vote tallies from Arizona's most populous county aimed to prove massive fraud in the 2020 election. But that effort, led by the now defunct Florida firm Cyber Ninjas, ridiculous name, devolved into a farce because they were so ridiculous, featuring a baseless, conspiracy-fueled hunt for bamboo fibers, if you remember. When the group announced the results of its audit in September of 2021, they showed Biden won the county by a slightly larger margin than originally reported. In July, I am amazed that they admitted that, the Arizona Republic reported that the Attorney General's office had begun scrutinizing the audit in addition to the fake elector scheme. And it's a good idea. I mean, I know at that point everything was supposedly moot, and you could have said, well, they've embarrassed themselves enough, let's let it lie. I think I support the idea of looking at it and saying, why should you be allowed to try to make a credible looking but fake and fraudulent effort to do this, and hey, if it fails, we all just agree to let it go away. No, let's examine the mechanism by which you were able to call national attention to a unsubstantiated and unfounded effort. No legal basis for what you were doing whatsoever. Plus, lots of questions about who it was that you hired, by what process you claimed to be hiring them, and the use of the state mechanisms for this bizarro partisan end that, yes, thankfully it all collapsed under its own weight, but let's take a look at how this thing was set up and whether anybody crossed any one of dozens of lines that we think probably were crossed in setting this whole thing up. Yes, it all collapsed, but shouldn't you be held accountable? Well, why should it be? Well, it's a freebie. If it all collapses under its own weight, everyone will say, well, that didn't work out, and let's just set aside and forget about it. But of course, they'll be trying it again in 2024. And to the extent that laws were broken or fraud was committed or lines were crossed, you should document that so that you can prevent it from happening in 2024, or at least try the people who try to bring this about and put them on trial and demonstrate what the problems were and show that they too, like January 6th insurrectionists, belong in jail when all of this is said and done. Don't let it lie. Don't have to, recreate the work and reinvent the wheel in 2024 when you put those people on trial. You should be able to point to the precedent of having imprisoned them earlier, or at least the people who did the same work. So let's see. What are they up to? They are scrutinizing the audit in addition to the fake elector scheme. Investigators' questions have centered on the involvement of Trump and his top aides in the audit. In particular, investigators inquired about $1 million donation from former President Trump's Save America PAC to fund Cyber Ninja's work, which is to be expected, but also should be punished if it is illegal. A spokesperson for Save America PAC did not respond to questions from Rolling Stone. They'll only respond to questions, I guess, from the AG's office and those that have the power of the court behind it to punish them for not answering when necessary. Investigators have also shown an interest in the activities of top Trump campaign aides who helped with the fake elector scheme. In August, Rolling Stone reported that the Attorney General's office had asked questions about Rudy Giuliani and his efforts to organize a conference of far-right Arizona state legislators to air bogus election fraud allegations in November of 2020. Experts say that investigators' line of inquiry may indicate an interest in determining the existence of a broader conspiracy. If agents of the Attorney General's office are asking questions about events that took place after the substantive event, the actual day in which they put their pen to paper and signed off as fake electors, it is, in my mind, a possibility that they are investigating what, if any, conspiracy may have existed after the substantive offense took place, if they believe that a substantive offense took place. Paul Charlton, a former U.S. Attorney for Arizona, tells Rolling Stone. So that made it a little bit more confusing than it has to be. But yes, this was happening in several states. Only Georgia is prosecuting at the moment, and I think it's probably a mistake to sit back and say, we'll let Georgia do the work, and they'll probably catch him. And then when they sentence him to whatever anybody gets sentenced to in Georgia, the job will be done, and it will be repetitive and moot for us to prosecute him here in our state. No. It should absolutely be the case. You should be prosecuting them in every state based on the success of what happens in Georgia, if that's what happens. And certainly if they should fail, you should absolutely, take up the slack and say, well, we won't fail with it here in Arizona. Every state where there were fake electors should be doing this. And Trump, by all rights, he should just serve sentences consecutively in each one of the states. And die behind bars as a result. But everybody should be prosecuting it. There's nothing moot about it in the other states. You shouldn't leave it to other states to do all the work and incur all the expense. And there's no point in letting it slide in a couple of states because, well, he's already facing prosecution elsewhere. No, these things have to be prosecuted. If you did them, you did the crime, you need to do the time. Even if judges allow eventually the sentences to be served concurrently, even though they're not in the same jurisdiction. I don't really know if that would actually work, but anyway, nothing should be allowed to slide in all of this. That's my opinion. So I wanted to bring you up to speed on the fact that there are other states that could absolutely be prosecuting him for these same infractions. Let's see. Other things that require some attention. This is a bit of a Friday thing. Maybe we can save that one for later, although very interesting. Oh, I also should note for you, I don't know what his interest in it was, but I am pretty sure I saw the other day. Can I find Adam Serwer on Blue Sky? And in the last day or so, here we go. Let's see. I gotta have to look at his feed and scroll back down. Yeah. So, well, yesterday, 14 hours ago, whatever that might be. So, last evening, I thought this was of some interest. He was messaging, however the hell we talk about it, on Blue Sky, saying, I feel like we don't know enough about this kind of stuff, and knowing more would explain some things. And, that's a pretty generic statement. But what was he talking about? He attached here, remember this article? I don't know if we ever made it all the way through the article. And I was finding it sort of difficult to work into the program and read. And then I was finding it difficult to leave behind because I've brought it back up again. And said, remember that thing? And I don't know if we got all the way through it. The Texas Tribune article from August 14th about Here's the headline. Gen Z influencers, quietly recruited by a company with deep GOP ties, rally to impeached Ken Paxton's aid. And then, of course, Ken Paxton was eventually acquitted by the Republican legislature down there in Texas, despite the overwhelming evidence of his guilt and the interest in many state legislators, Republican, in bringing the charges. And yet, somehow, whatever. And was it because of this company with deep GOP ties rallying Gen Z influencers to impeach Ken Paxton's aid? Was it something else? Was it just a sideshow? Or would it explain some things? Well, I thought it was an interesting enough article to return to twice on the show. And it's always a good sign when Adam Serwer takes interest in some of these more obscure stories as well. And it would be, I don't know, to me, it would be a very appropriate use of his time to dive in and see what he makes of all of this. And then we can say, remember when we shared this story with you twice? Adam Serwer likely to be able to make a bigger deal out of this story than we are. And then we'll all say, yeah, we knew that because we read it twice on KITM. Just wanted to point that out. And shift direction once again for the end of this third segment. Let's see. Which of the things I have on tap are of the greatest importance here? Well, let's see. Oh, do I want to read does this offer me it probably doesn't, but I wonder will this let me read? Yes, maybe. How about, let's see. I don't know. Why not? Let's share this one because Matthew Rigdon shared it the other day and we didn't get a chance to look at this. Instead, we looked back at the Red Caesarism story. And so maybe today is a good reason to look at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram's opinion piece. Let's see. Can I find his commentary on this one? Is it going to be easy? Here we are. From my hometown news rag, Republican opinion piece hitting J.D. Vance and populism. How do you like that? That's the intro via Mastodon from Matthew Rigdon introducing this piece. Let's take a look. Why are some Republicans acting like progressive Democrats? This bill is a clue, says the opinion piece, as the title of the opinion piece from Tom Giovanetti from just a couple of days ago, September 29th, again in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Let's see what's up here. Those of us who identify as traditional conservatives, I guess that's what Tom does, skeptical of government power, leery of regulation, believing in economic efficiency, and trusting markets to deliver value to consumers, have been warning about the current populist streak that has captured a portion of the Republican Party. The problem is that Republican populism often looks a lot like Democratic progressivism. Ooh, so you can't have that, obviously. It's the horseshoe theory of politics, the idea that the extremes are at either end of the political spectrum actually end up meeting, sometimes true. And right now in Congress, we have a perfect example in the Railway Safety Act. If it passes, it will harm the nation's economy. Railway safety will, obviously, and our efforts to strengthen our infrastructure. It could have particularly negative consequences for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and a Republican populist is driving it. And of course, why? Because they want very badly to be able to blame railway accidents on Joe Biden for some reason, because everyone knows he hates railroads, which is actually the thing he's most famous for supporting. But okay. Just after the train derailment in February dumped hazardous chemicals in East Palestine, Ohio, freshman Republican Senator J.D. Vance sensed an opportunity to demonstrate his new right populist bona fides. Vance demagogued against the railroads for being lax about safety, cozied up to labor unions, and teamed up with fellow Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown, a Democrat, to draft the Railway Safety Act. This is an interesting confluence of political currents here. You would think that the bill would be written to target specific items that would make such accidents less likely, but you would be wrong. It's just a grab bag of provisions the 12 rail labor unions have been demanding for years. Either Vance got rolled by his Ohio colleague, or there is little difference between Vance's economic worldview and the worldview of progressive Democrats. Oh, I don't know about that. I feel like there's still a lot of differences. The main provisions of the bill have nothing to do with anything that would have prevented that February derailment. Mostly the bill bars railroads from implementing technology that would make rail freight trains safer, but that would require fewer union jobs. Yet again, labor unions are fighting to protect the old way of doing things and opposing innovations and new technologies that would actually be more accurate and safer than error-prone humans. Okay? Well, we sort of see where he's coming from here. Interesting, but I don't know how persuasive. We'll see. These include provisions such as minimum crew sizes, requiring that rail cars be inspected by union-certified personnel, oh no, and opposing automation that would require fewer human interventions. Ironically, had Norfolk Southern Railroad implemented more of this technology, it could, maybe, kind of, sort of, very well, have prevented the East Palestine derailment. Or, maybe not. I don't know. AI, I guess, should drive all the trains, is what he's guessing. I'm guessing, he says. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is with us. I guess I'm sure the side conversation's now over, but we enjoy the background noise just as we get here in the diner that we run here on Mondays and Fridays to give us Midwestern diner ambiance. I like the occasional revelation that we're all just kids living in our mom's basements at some level.
Midwestern?
No, it's the diner is, we're faking Midwestern here.
Okay.
Yeah. There's nothing Western about what's going on here, mid or otherwise. But, diners have to be Midwestern, which is weird because they're really Northeastern phenomena. But I don't know. Do they even... There's certainly luncheonettes and breakfast places everywhere, but for some reason, when Eastern reporters go to the Midwest, or something they think of as Midwestern because it's west of, say, Pittsburgh. So there you go. They now think that they're journeying into the wilds, but they still refer to them as diners because that's what we call them back east. I don't know whether that's as popular a term where they're reporting from, but anyway, it all seems fake, so what's the difference? So, Joan McCarter, welcome back. We've averted a shutdown, but as I reminded everybody, that just means we're on a 45-day countdown to the next one, because we're always essentially on shutdown watch. So don't think it's over yet. And
no, they just have 45 days to... I think it's 45 days now. It was 48 technically on Saturday.
Okay.
They bought 48 days technically.
They went to another Friday so that they could use the calendar to their advantage.
Yes.
And to tell everybody, well, if you don't
and
fix it
Thanksgiving.
now. Okay. Oh, right. Will that be the beginning of their Thanksgiving break, the 17th?
Yep.
Okay. So that explains it. So, so if you want to go home for the break, you got to finish this, although I don't know how persuasive the 17th is, but is the following Thursday Thanksgiving, so you want to be home to, I don't know what, bake pies or something. Like all members of Congress are going home to bake. I'm sure they're taking care of the dinner, but they have meetings to get to, et cetera, et cetera. And they want the whole weekend to do it. It wouldn't be surprising to see them take through the weekend to fix the thing and have a mini shutdown that affects nobody because government offices were closed anyway. But it's all still in the offing. So we all know this. But for the time being, they're up and running. So I don't know whether your attention is there or at the other end, that other entire branch of the government that you're responsible for covering, the Supreme Court. You have a lot of work ahead of you, Joan.
Right now it's on the motion to vacate.
Okay. So, right. That's, of course, been in the news. And it's a good reminder of some of the more important and weightier procedures that members can propose actually take quite a while to work their way back to the floor. So are we still waiting? They have 2 days, the leadership does, to decide when they're going to do this.
McCarthy says he wants to do it today, so
okay,
strap in.
Right. Well, he's not afraid of it, probably with good reason, and it only takes an hour for them to allow him to have his debate.
It'll probably take a little longer, depending on how they decide to go with it.
Mm-hmm. They're entitled to an hour, but as with most things about how they keep the time, it'll run over. People will be gavelled at that you should be shutting up now, and they won't do it. It'll take a while.
So if they do the first thing they do is a motion to table.
Yeah,
that's not debatable. If it wins, it's over.
Okay.
If they try a motion to refer it to committee, that is debatable, so it takes a little bit of time.
Okay, so that could be another hour.
If they vote to do that, it's over.
Okay.
If they vote to do neither of those things, table or refer to committee, then it goes to the actual question, do we keep him? Mm-hmm. And the debate for that is an hour.
All right.
And we're going to be following it all live on Daily Kos, so. Yeah,
all right. Well, we'll see what people decide to do. It wouldn't be crazy for Democrats to say, well, I don't have any particular interest in short-circuiting it. So you might find people say, all right, I'll vote against the motion to table and against the motion to refer to committee, but then either absent myself, vote present, or even possibly vote yes. Or no. I mean, he could do anything. Lots of people, and I don't think that they're whipping on it. They're just saying, I don't know, man, we got to do what you want to do. Nothing's going to happen. As long as we don't all unify, we can't really control what's going to happen anyway. So in all likelihood, Gaetz has like 5 people saying yes to this so far. So not much danger of anything happening. The only thing you want to watch out for is, you don't actually probably want to vacate the chair. As much as we all dislike Kevin McCarthy, we don't know who occupies the chair afterwards, and there may be no answer to who could occupy the chair. It took 15 tries to get him in, so it'll probably take 100 tries to get somebody else, and we can't do anything, and you can't take care of any other business until you fill that chair. So to the extent that you guys maybe want to fund the government or even have messaging votes, there's not going to be any until there's somebody in the chair. So don't we just say, we were prepared to live with 2 years of Kevin McCarthy, as terrible as that is. Let's just continue to do that. Or do you decide, let's make some trouble, or allow Republicans to realize they've let Matt Gaetz go too far but I don't know. I just don't like that fuse. I don't know if that's a great idea. Let's think about this. Cut the blue wire. But first, okay. I don't know. So, all right, you get to cover that all day and guess at what's going on? Or guess what will go on?
Yes, and right now I'm trying to introduce it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's difficult to do. So do you have a flow chart or something for people to follow, or you one for
There's
yourself?
There's actually a really handy flow chart at Washington Post this morning.
Okay.
But yeah, nice. Basic flow chart. I did not write it up pretty.
Okay. Well, there's nothing. You shouldn't spend a great deal of time on it, I don't think. I mean, I think it's something that ends early today in disappointment for Gaetz, although Gaetz says, I'll just bring it again and again, and then he probably will.
He probably will.
There's no reason not to.
It will depend, I think, on how it ends up today. It could be so embarrassing for Gaetz.
Yeah.
That he just has to give it up. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because there's different things that everybody could do and different messages, sometimes two different interpretations to the same position that people will take. Does voting yes mean I personally dislike McCarthy? I just politically think he's bad for the party. I just want to make trouble. I just like Matt Gaetz. No one can tell what it's supposed to mean. And there are also probably a lot of Republicans who kind of would like to fire a warning shot at McCarthy, but don't want to be on that. I never want to have my name surrounded by Matt Gaetz, Paul Gosar, and other wackos, assorted weirdos. And some of the assorted weirdos are saying, no, I'm going to be on the other list this time. Chip Roy, for whatever reason, says, no, I'm not really interested in participating in this. And I think Andy Biggs, too. And
Biggs, last I saw, was with.
Is that right? Okay. Maybe yeah. I did see his name earlier, and so I don't know. I'll check. Although, who knows? It could easily be the case that they're telling different people different things, either purposely or I forgot or I changed my mind. Biggs is on the list of supporters. Biggs, Bob Good, and Eli Crane, who I don't think I've ever encountered in any capacity.
Yeah, Crane's one of them.
But okay, they were listed as supporting Gaetz's move. But where did I see Chip Roy saying no?
Chip Roy says no.
Okay. Byron Donalds, that was the other, who had said, no, I don't think so either. So both had said no to this, but maybe reserving their right to say yes later on. Who knows? So it'll be of interest to procedure nuts to see how many different ways you can derail such a thing. So, okay. And that's all you'll have to do is sit there and watch for several hours. Is it distracting you from Supreme Court coverage or someone else taking that?
Well, I did a preview of that. I don't know if it's run yet, but I've got a preview in of that.
All right.
Yes, it is distracting me from covering the CFPB stuff that they're doing today, which you've talked about already.
Yeah, a little bit in the context of Clarence Thomas's connections and Alito's and why they should probably both not be hearing the case, but will anyway. So
yeah,
that's what they do. All right. So let's see. So once you cover this nonsense, I was looking, by the way, at the schedule for the House, and I guess they haven't updated it since. I guess they originally said it because it looked like if I read it correctly, they were planning on being out of D.C. this week and next.
They were. And because the debt ceiling deal, or the debt ceiling.
the other crazy thing.
The other thing, yes.
Shutdown.
Because they avoided the shutdown, they now say they have to get through all of the remaining appropriations bills.
Which is 11 still, isn't it? Or did they
it's
throw one?
They did 3 sort of in the House last week.
Okay.
None of which
the Senate didn't get a chance to do yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to keep track because, there's really only one ball we all had to watch, which was the shutdown one, but they could have been handling some others, but they've still got a mountain of work to do. So I looked at the schedule, and that didn't, thankfully, there was enough activity going on, and I knew Gaetz was making this motion, so they'd all at least be busy with that. But it makes some sense that they'll stay here and work, because the original schedule was, of the 7 weeks they were giving themselves, they were taking 3 of them outside of D.C. They were doing like a 2 weeks off now, 2 weeks in after that, and then 2 more weeks off before returning for a final stretch to the now November 17th deadline. But I guess instead they'll feel like they have to stick around and try and finish these appropriations, which is true, unless they want to go through the whole stupid CR exercise again on November 17th.
They're going to have to. There's no way they can get through all of this. House passes the rest of theirs. Mm-hmm. We don't know yet at what level they're going to be passing them, what budget level, but they should have to come back to what they agreed on with President Biden in the debt ceiling agreement.
You would think.
So far, they've been below. The stuff that they've passed has been below that. So they have to have that fight in the House. The Senate has already agreed on a bipartisan basis to all of its funding levels, and it's written all of its appropriations bills to that. So,
okay.
Senate has to pass the rest of theirs. They have to reconcile them. They have to convince the House that it's got to come back up to the agreed upon levels. This is not going to happen by November 17th.
That's not a lot of time. For others of us, we would say, well, we work hard and we can do it. But this is now we're talking about passing 2 appropriations bills a week, like signed into law.
Right. And it'll have to be an omnibus, which is another broken promise from McCarthy that he has to have a fight over. Mm-hmm. So does this happen by November 17th? I don't think so. Unless the fever has completely broken in the House. And, maybe Gaetz's motion will help make that happen. On the other hand, Democrats might say, McCarthy, we're kind of fed up with doing this with you, and you're on your own, so you figure it out. When he went on Face the Nation Sunday and said that on Saturday Democrats did everything in their power to try to force a shutdown, I think he kind of just ended any possibility of getting their help. Maybe not.
Yeah, it would be interesting if it wasn't the case, if only because it should give everybody the opportunity. We all remember in recent years that the papers of record would constantly report that the important business of governing had been disrupted, not by the Republicans who were saying screw governance, but by the Democrats. Some Democrats said something that was insulting to Republicans, and therefore they were going to withhold their support for the efforts at governance. And isn't that really Democrats' fault for doing that insulting thing? And that whole formula appears to have disappeared. This is weird that the Speaker of the House, a Republican, can go on Face the Nation, and in the face of the facts.
To her credit, Margaret Brennan pretty much laughed at him.
Yes,
when he said it,
that is.
You only had to look at the actual vote count.
Yeah,
to see the Democrats did indeed pass this thing.
That was.
It was just typical McCarthy. He drops it with no warning at all to Democrats.
Right.
He says, "Okay, we're going to vote on it in 20 minutes."
Yeah. That's always a cartoonish example of the thing that Republicans always complained about, Right. We have to have, we'll give you 48 hours to read the bill. We want 72. Okay. I mean, that's a nice amount of time. That could be a thing too. We don't have time for that right now, but 72, it's a doable goal. How about, 11 minutes, right? No, what? No, we don't. Well, don't you trust me that I didn't put anything weird or secret in any of these 40 pages?
71 pages, but yeah.
Okay. Okay.
No,
I
do they
don't.
trust Kevin McCarthy? Do they have any reason at all to trust Kevin McCarthy?
I've been clear about that. No, they don't, and there's good reason, and neither do his own people.
Starting with his vote against certifying the 2020 election, moments after the House had been cleared of marauding mobs trying to kill members of Congress.
Yeah, and you're crying
all
about
the way
it.
through to, doing this bogus impeachment inquiry.
Right. There's really no reason.
Why would anyone trust Kevin McCarthy? Which is why he's not going to get a lot of help from Democrats today, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there doesn't have to be a whole lot of help. And the reason he is probably fairly confident is in order to make this work, Gaetz having so little actual support, he needs to know ahead of time, essentially. The Democrats have to get together and say, we're doing this as a caucus and we're going to help you. And two things that there's no indication of. One, no interest in helping Gaetz, and no indication that there's any effort to unify the caucus to participate in any way, in any direction. It's just sort of, I don't know, do what you want to do, because it's not up to us. And it's not our problem.
And he's made it not their problem repeatedly. And, he talked to Jeffries apparently late last night, said, okay, we're probably going to do this tomorrow and do what you got to do. Not trying to negotiate, not offering anything in return for Democratic support, just saying, well, it's about the institution.
Okay.
So,
I mean,
making appeals to Democrats' higher principles,
I guess, or at least signaling, I don't really have to give you anything for you to do, for you to do what I want here, because it would require
you guys are
unanimity
the
not
the good
to.
Guys,
yeah. One, I can count on that, and two, honestly, there's no call for negotiation. I give them, a pass on that. Like, I know people would like to be able to get some concession out of them, but until the Democrats say, no, we're going to actually unify, as dumb as this looks, we're going to unify in favor of vacating the speakership. He doesn't, there's no call for him to give any concessions, because it's probably going to come down in his favor no matter what.
I don't know.
So I think he's probably right about that.
It's a simple majority
Yeah.
of those present and voting.
Yes.
We can only lose 4. There are probably 4. And if AOC goes with Gaetz, 5.
Yeah. I mean, it would take a remarkable coordination to make it work.
We have no way of knowing how this is going to end up. We also have no way of knowing who's going to be willing to take the job if he's booted.
Yeah. I mean, willing is one thing, but able is another question.
Also, procedurally, we should say that as a result of September 11th changes in government, there is a successor named. And that would be the person who would, at least temporarily, fill the seat until they had elections.
Oh, okay.
So McCarthy has chosen somebody. Don't know who. My guess would be Scalise. But Scalise doesn't want the job, and Scalise is fighting cancer right now and not well. So
right. Yeah, that's a good question, where that goes to, and what opportunity he has to name someone else if necessary. Okay, well, at least so that's not doesn't grind everything to a halt, but not good for the long-term stability or what have you. But
no,
I just don't think it gets
all.
that far.
And there's a lot, again, 45 days to avert another government shutdown. Ukraine aid has to be dealt with. The farm bill needs to be passed.
Oh, that's the real
reauthorization of the farm bill. That didn't get done in the government shutdown stuff. So there's a lot that needs to be done in the next month or so. And the last thing they need is the soap opera.
And yet that's what they will get.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll watch it happening. Has it actually begun? Are they thinking 1 o'clock?
They come in at 1.
Okay.
No, they come in at noon for 1 minute, which they have 5 minutes for. I've never really understood that.
Oh, well, they just schedule the number of 1 minutes they're going to allot.
Right.
Okay.
So anyway, we have 1 minute from noon to 1. Legislative business starts at 1. Vote's supposed to start at 1:30. That's all a little bit, because McCarthy's just going to run with this today. That's as much as we know. Be ready starting at 1 to watch.
Okay. And the biggest downside to the whole thing is it could be an extended amount of time during which Matt Gaetz has a microphone. So that is never good.
Which is a huge part of this whole endeavor.
Yeah. So I guess, I imagine they're not going to let him run too much longer than
there's only supposed to be an hour for debate on the actual motion to vacate. And
then ordinarily half of that time goes to opposition. If there is any. I mean, who knows? So I guess Gaetz keeps about half an hour of it, and they're probably not gonna want to antagonize him by gaveling him closed at 29 minutes and 59 seconds. So he'll run over a little bit. So more Matt Gaetz than you ever wanted to hear, and of course he'll be yielding some of that time to the 5 people who come to the floor in support of his resolution. So it should be a real show. I mean, the wackiest, weirdest Freedom Caucus members.
5? Did it take 3 days or 5 days? I don't remember in January to seat McCarthy.
The 15. Yeah, I don't know.
15 votes. I think
it was votes.
I think it stretched over 5 days. I'm not certain. Yeah, they gave us a show then. We're getting another show now.
Yeah. All right, so that we get to watch that by tomorrow. By late this afternoon, it'll all be over, I would think, unless the unthinkable occurs and the 1 in 100 chance that the resolution is actually adopted and vacates the chair.
It could happen. I mean.
Yeah, I mean you have to point out that it's a real thing and you could actually do it, although never been done before, as they pointed out, and the only motions to vacate the chair that have ever been brought to a vote were all against Republicans.
There was one.
Wondering about that. I saw only 2 listed today. They never did bring the one against Boehner.
No, they threatened. They never actually put them on the floor. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're counting threats, I assume that there was once a threat against a Democrat, too. We just don't know where or when.
I've never heard of one.
Yeah, I mean, it could be back in the 1880s, somebody threatened. If that's all it takes to get into the count, then who knows. But one guy alone, because this guy, Gaetz, has maybe 5 people, possibly 200, but maybe also just 5. We don't really know. And, okay, so I guess it doesn't happen all that often, and anything could happen, but generally speaking, the least surprising things tend to be the ones that come out.
Gaetz also, we should say, has been threatening to do this again and again and again until he gets what he wants.
I did see...
we're not really sure what he wants.
Right. So,
besides attention.
No point in... there's definitely that. Maybe a little extra money in his Venmo account for
he is definitely fundraising off of this.
Sure.
Because he wants to be governor of Florida.
Oh, really? Well, I guess now that he's learned from Ron DeSantis that you can do whatever you want and be a mini dictator, that's a very attractive job now.
I think so.
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to be rid of him. I don't know whether the people of Florida would be happy to receive him, but
if the people of Florida
problem.
are misguided enough to elect him, well, then that's on them.
Yeah, I can't help you. And good luck. But yeah, he can do this over and over again. I did say, I mean, I'm glad he's aware of that, and he can disrupt things however often he feels like. And I thought it was an interesting comparison. He said, well, you know, if it took 15 ballots to get McCarthy in, I should be entitled to at least 15 of these resolutions, these motions to vacate the chair before I'm infringing too much on the time of the House. That was an interesting way of looking at it.
The other thing that could happen
yes,
is that the House Ethics Committee moves very quickly.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Because that's hanging out there for Gaetz, too. After the Department of Justice decided not to bring any charges, the House Ethics Committee re-upped its investigation of him.
Yeah.
Not entirely sure what they're looking at, but I think it's finance, campaign finance stuff, money stuff, rather than, sex pest stuff.
Well, too bad it's not the
But
latter,
if they get fed up with him enough, then that can happen too.
Okay, yeah. Of course, they still would need to, in order to actually get rid of him, I guess they could censure him. That would be interesting, to censure him on the day that he's planning to bring his next motion to vacate the chair and forbid him from speaking on his own motion that day. You can arrange that.
That's a good idea.
It could happen. Right, okay, well, let's see if we can. That's a lot less far-fetched than declaring his seat vacant, which, not expelling him, but what if they just said, we declare your seat vacant and all we need is a majority vote, and who can tell us no? The Supreme Court?
Well, I think they would definitely get a majority for that.
Yeah, that might actually work, but it would be scary and dictatorial. But hey, that's what Republicans do these days. All right, so you got your work cut out for you for today. Thank you for coming by and occupying the few warm-up hours before the show begins with us.
You are most welcome.
And we'll see who's Speaker of the House and whether there's a government next week, perhaps. I think we're okay until November, but maybe no Speaker. Wouldn't that be exciting? All right. Well, thanks for coming by. Hang in there, get some popcorn. And
who knows what we'll have to talk about next Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, it's all a mystery and an exciting one at that. We'll check in again.
From networksradio.com.
Take care.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Yes, and that's your problem. Well, you had a chance to listen to Joan, though. At least we lightened the load for you a little bit. And, of course, now a chance to listen to Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next right here on Netroots Radio. We'll kick it off. Let's see. News from Jack Smith's Special Counsel Office. Let's see what's going on there and around the country and around the world.